now is the exciting time. Now we get to add our enemy into the game. So we've got our enemy sprite right here. This ravenous looking thing. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and just drag it into our scene. Make it a bit bigger. I'll make it quite a bit bigger. There he is. And this guy here, he's going to patrol left and right, but I don't want him to be on this platform right now. I'll go into my platforms and I'll just copy some. Just for testing purposes, I'm going to move these ones here, just down here. Cool. My enemy is no longer just called enemy sprite, he's just an enemy. It's going to be on this platform. So he's going to go back and forwards and flip his character, depending on if he hits into the edges or not. So that is my enemy. I'm going to tag this object as an enemy. If enemy's not there, just click on add tag and plus and write in the name of the tag that you want, in this case enemy. Then go to it and click on the drop down. So my enemy is going to have one simple script. All it's going to do is it's going to just go back and forwards. So I'll go into my scripts folder. I'm going to create a script, and this one's going to be called enemy behavior. This is going to tell all my say all the behaviors that my enemy is meant to have. So I'll give that to my enemy, and I'll go ahead and open it up. Alright, so now we're in the script. So my enemy is going to need a few things. I'm going to need a rigid body. Rigid body 2D. I'm going to call this RB. Remember, rigid bodies are in charge of all the physics that allow this to move. So RB for rigid body is going to equal this game objects. Game object dot get components spiky brackets. The name of the component is its rigid body 2D. So this will get the rigid body of whatever game object the script is attached to. So the rigid body of this enemy. Now each of my enemies I want to have 3 life. Now the enemies can keep track of their own life because there's going to be a different life total for every single one. So I'll make it public so that we can see it. Public int for an integer, life total. By default I'm going to set this to 3. Alright, later on I'm going to make it so that if he gets hit, this life total is going to change. But at the beginning of the game, all I want is my enemy to move. So I just want change its velocity of rigid body dot velocity equals transform dot right, so it'll move to the right, times however fast I want it to go. We'll make it go 20. In fact, we'll set this to be a integer so that we can change its speed later on. Public int enemy speed, and we'll set this to be 20. And instead of using this integer, we'll use the variable we just made called enemy speed. So what we should see is that our enemy will move to the right at a speed of 20, but he's just going to run straight off the edge. So we've got to make it so that instead he hits into something and turns around. So we'll go back to Unity. And as well as our enemy, we're going to give him a couple things. We'll give him his rigid body, and we'll also give him a collider. We'll give him a capsule collider. That looks quite close to him, but I'll edit it and just drag it in a little bit. So now he should be able to move. His collider will hit the collider of the ground, and he can go back and forwards. But he's just going to run straight off the edge, so we're going to add an empty thing, and we're going to call this turn enemy. We're going to give this a little icon, make it a little green one, just so that we can see it in the scene. But we'll just move it over here. We'll give it a collider, a circle collider. Doesn't quite matter about the size, but we'll make it a little bit bigger. And we'll make sure that this is a trigger. So what we're going to do is we're going to make it so that whenever this thing hits into a collider, a turn enemy collider, it flips the enemy. So we can add as many of these as we need to, probably one at the end of each of the platforms. But we're going to add a component. In fact, I'll do it down here. We'll make a script called flip enemy. So turn enemy is going to have that script. And we'll open it up to write it. Alright, so this is the script to flip our enemies. All we're going to do is similar to our movement script. We're going to rotate it, but in this case we want to write void on trigger enter 2D collider 2D, and we'll call this one the enemy. If enemy.tag equals enemy, so if it's tagged as an enemy, and we know we set that up last time, then we want the enemy dot transform dot rotate 0 on the x, float for f, 0 on the y, no, in fact 180 on the y, 0 on the z. So we'll save this and we'll go back to Unity. Alright, so we have our enemy here, our turn enemy script, turn enemy little object here. I'm going to copy this and put another one on this side. The reason that we've done it the way we have is so that if any enemy hits into this, then it'll be flipped. So we can have multiple enemies patrolling at one area. So with our enemy, what we want to do is we want to quickly just make sure that his constraints are set to freeze rotation so he doesn't wobble around, and we'll click play. So I'll head over here, and there he is. Oh, he's going backwards, but he is going along this way. Not a very big path for such a big guy. I might just make him a little bit smaller. By a little bit, I mean quite some. And lastly, I'm going to make it so that his sprite renderer flips him around. So now he's going to be going forward. Just make sure both of these are low enough so that he can run into them. So now if I head over, you should see the little guy, there he goes, back and forwards, patrolling this area. But you'll notice that when he ran into me, nothing really happens, and when I shoot him, he dies. I don't want him to die straight away when he gets shot. I want him to instead just lose a life. So what we set up the other day was that when our projectiles... Going back into here. So what our projectile script currently does is that whenever it hits anything, it says, is that thing that I hit an enemy? Does it have the tag of enemy? If so, then just destroy it. But instead what we'd like it to do is we'd like it to just decrease the life and then destroy it once it's dead. So what we'll do is we'll write the thing I hit dot get components, the name of the script, which is called enemy behavior, and then we want to change dot the public variable called life total, and we're just going to minus minus, so decrease it by 1. And then eventually, if, and we can just copy this, the life total equals 0. In that case, we want to destroy the enemy. And then this here will just destroy the bullet whenever it hits anything. So that is, in its entirety, the script for shooting an enemy down to have 0 life. So we'll click on my enemy just so that I can quickly gaze at its life total, and I'll click play. So we see its life total over here is at 3. I'll shoot it once, it's now down to 2, 1, and he's gone. Got deleted out, because its life total equaled 0. So that is everything we need to know about our enemies. We've got the enemy itself, who can move at this speed. We've got the turn enemy objects, which just simply take whatever hit them, check if it was an enemy. If it was, flip them around. And we've got our projectiles updated, so now if they hit into an enemy, and there's none in here of course because they are a prefab, if they hit into an enemy, they will now destroy it using the projectile script. That is everything we need to worry about with enemies. We can now just duplicate this, the enemy plus its turn enemy objects, as many times as we please for our game, and that'll all work.